It's good to be back. Good to be back live. This is how the show is meant to be, where I'm live riffing on all things Buffalo Bills, and you guys are able to fire away your comments in the comment section below, whether you're tuning in on Facebook, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, whether you're tuning in on X, wherever it is that you're tuning in. I greatly appreciate the support for the show. You guys have been rock steady with me during my move, where now I can be live. Everything's all set. You guys see the background here of the Josh Allen stuff on my wall. Yes, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs did make the cut. That will stay up there as a bit of a memory piece for the time being. But nonetheless, mini helmets, signatures, all that stuff over there. Really excited to be settled in finally, have the opportunity to put out these live shows as I like to, because I like to hear from the people that tune in via the comment section. So, of course, I'll start off with the chime in and fire away some comments in the comment section below as you get the chance to chat with me throughout the show. Tonight, a big show talking about the biggest storylines surrounding the Buffalo Bills heading into the 2024 season. Of course, I've talked about the youth movement in Buffalo that's taken place over this offseason. It's kind of an out with the old, in with the new type of offseason for the Buffalo Bills. And being at the Micah Hyde charity softball game this past weekend, Jordan Poyer made his presence felt. He made an appearance. Of course, it got me thinking about a lot of topics that surround leadership, that surround new pieces coming in, and who could potentially be leaders on this team. So I'll be talking about that, as well as a little bit of breaking news in the Dynasty Fantasy Football League that I've been running the last 3-4 seasons. It's been a hectic month. A lot of trades have gone down, so I'll have something for the fantasy football folks out there, something that went down as early as an hour ago that will be official by the time I hopped on this podcast. So, of course, everybody tuning in, I want to let you know that this show is brought to you by 26shirts.com. I did see not one, not two, but three 26 Shirts tents at the Micah Hyde charity softball game. I was able to meet some great folks. Didn't catch Del Reed. I'll have to check that out next time at the next event that he is hosting as a vendor. But in regards to the jerseys, he supplied the jerseys for the event. That was really cool to see. Go to 26shirts.com. It's nice to know that Del Reed has been a big part of not just the Bills Mafia and creating it essentially, but has also been a big part of what we are working on and building at the Buffalo Fan Base Network here. So really happy to be back on actually live, as the last few weeks of this show were pre-recorded. I got about 200 people tuning in right now across all platforms. So 4 minutes in, not too shabby, with the sponsorship plug being the beginning of the show every single week. 26shirts.com. Check them out for any, Bills apparel, Buffalo apparel, or Buffalo apparel, as I like to call it. Check out 26shirts.com. Any purchase that you make goes right towards the community. So, with that being said, first talking point tonight, as I mentioned, please fire away what you believe are the biggest storylines heading into the 2024 NFL season. As I like to, reflect on what I believe are the biggest storylines, I want to give everybody the opportunity to let me know what they think. And in the process of doing that, of course, I'll be sure to click your comment, highlight that comment, and dive into it. So this is the biggest storylines for the Buffalo Bills heading into 2024. And I want to start off with the biggest one, in my opinion, first. The number one storyline, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Keon Coleman. The legend part is the question mark, because we don't quite know if he will be a Bills legend quite yet. He's only a rookie. We only drafted him less than a month ago. But the man is the man right now. As far as the interviews, as far as the sound bites, I think it's more than just a personality I think it's genuine in terms of how he comes across as a teammate. The OTAs have just begun. I've really liked what I've seen from him just in any snippet of him that I have seen personality wise. I feel like he brings quite a lot to the table. And the legend part is really what is going to separate him and make him a superstar if he can be the wide receiver one, shall I say, that Stephon Diggs was the last 4 years here in Buffalo. If Keon Coleman can piggyback off of that success and propel this Bills offense long term, not just in the short term, but in the long term, I think his legend will rise. The personality will be even more well known than what it is already. And when you see a player with a personality like that, it makes you wonder to yourself, at least in my case, when I watch Keon Coleman's interviews and such, I say to myself, you know what? If this guy is half as good on the field as he is at talking, then he's going to be a superstar. And it comes down to the whole charisma effect. I thought the same thing back in 2014, 2013 with a guy by the name of Conor McGregor. Everybody knows I'm a big mixed martial arts fan. I remember watching his fights with Cage Warriors and thinking, if this guy can continue to win like this, and if this guy can continue to perform inside and outside the octagon the way that he is, then he's going to be a big star. And Keon Coleman has performed collegiately at Florida State last season, comes into the NFL now, big stage. Can he kind of keep up that personality, that persona that has just grabbed everybody's attention? He's been on Adam Schefter's podcast. He's been on CBS Sports Network. He's been on a couple ESPN shows. The guy's had a true media run. And more than that, I think the storylines about how Keon Coleman has reached out to Andre Reed, and Andre Reed referred to that as a shock due to the fact that there's been a lot of young receivers that have come in and out of Buffalo, Sammy Watkins, Zay Jones, that had a lot of hype around them based on their ability that they showed in college. They didn't necessarily reach out to Andre Reed as rookies and say, hey, Uncle Andre, can you give me a little bit of advice on how to handle being a pro in Buffalo, how to go about my business in this league? Whereas Keon Coleman did. So I think that is a great sign for the hunger, the attitude, the character of Keon Coleman. And when I look at this last year's draft, yes, there were guys that I thought that would fit with the Bills, but looking back on it, I've alluded to it, a few times, but I really just continue to come away with the thought that Keon Coleman was always the player that the Buffalo Bills wanted, always the guy that they had targeted. And, shortly after he's drafted, you hear things like, well, this was the Bills guy. This was who they had looked at. This was a guy that they celebrated when he did not run a fast 40 time. Brandon Beane says, I'm glad he didn't run a fast 40. That means he's going to fall to us, be able to trade down once, maybe twice. And evidently that's what happened. So Keon Coleman appears to be the guy that is really going to fit. Buffalo is really going to fit what they need to do now and moving forward, and what they've wanted essentially. And I love to go about looking at the past, and I love to go down the road of, okay, who are some players that have really stood out as Buffalo Bills, not just on the field, but off the field. And it's always those guys that have been so endearing, always guys like Kyle Williams, guys like Aaron Schobel, guys like Fred Jackson, to name a few. Lee Evans was one. And I'm talking like drought era when things were not that great. And those types of guys were what Stevie Johnson as well. Those types of guys, I think, personality-wise, deserved to play with guys like Josh Allen, who also has that type of down-to-earth, regular guy personality that the Bills seem to be able to find those types of guys. And those types of guys are what are able to really translate to Buffalo and be Buffalo-esque type guys. So that's a huge deal. And the fact of the matter is that when you look at the types of players that we've been able to bring in over the years, when you look at Dawson Knox, Ed Oliver, Keon Coleman, their personalities, you could watch their interviews back to back to back, and you come away saying these guys are smart, charismatic, funny, and that's a huge deal to a locker room. It goes very much unnoticed to most fans, but anybody that's played football, myself included, would say that that's a factor that can really help a team win. That type of charisma when times are great can really catapult you. That type of charisma when times aren't so great can really pull you out of that not so great time frame that I think is essential to finding that success. So Keon Coleman, the man, the myth, the legend, question mark. We'll find out about the legend, but to me, that's the biggest storyline for the Buffalo Bills in this upcoming season. Now, the story of rookie running back Ray Davis is one worth rooting for. This is a topic and a story that I've not talked about yet, but pre-draft, we could do as many mock drafts as humanly possible. I could say, I'm going to take Andre Estime in the fourth round or fifth round. I could take Ray Davis in the fourth round or fifth round. That's what we did at nauseum during the February, March, April leading into the NFL draft. But Ray Davis, to me, was a guy that I just felt like fit what Buffalo has needed as a complement to current Buffalo Bills superstar running back James Cook. And to me, James Cook is a superstar. I'll refer to him as that. Maybe that's a little bit premature, but what he did last year in terms of yards per carry, in terms of taking over games, I feel like he's one of the most underrated backs in the National Football League. And he still needs that compliment, though. Just because he's, a superstar running back doesn't mean he can't come off the sideline. Nowadays, running backs really need to have that Robin to their Batman, so to speak, that can be out there in spell situations, in different situations where you need X amount of yards and short down and distance, where James Cook is on the sideline getting a sip of Gatorade. That's a huge deal that has kind of gone by the wayside these last few years in Buffalo. We had Shady McCoy. We had Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. They didn't really work out beyond the rookie deals, obviously. Then they draft James Cook. Then they bring in some veterans. Those guys were not long-term. I feel like now with this Ray Davis pick, as well as the signing of Frank Gore Jr., the Bills have 3 young running backs that can be a big part of this offense for a very long time, that actually fit what style of offense Joe Brady wants to run like a glove. And to me, that's the on-the-field stuff that makes the Ray Davis storyline so compelling. But the off-the-field stuff, I can only speak for myself and say if I went through even half of the things that Ray Davis went through growing up, I would not be in the NFL today. It's a truly remarkable story, the fact that Ray Davis went through the trials and tribulations that he did within his own household as a youngster, growing up in a broken home, foster care, passed around state to state. Largely, that was why he felt like he was used to transferring in college, because he had been moved around. And those are his words in recent interviews, that he's just always been a mover. He's always been a guy that's been shaking and moving to try to make things happen for himself. And this was the ultimate moment of his professional career where he was finally able to achieve what he had sought out as his destiny of being an NFL running back, drafted in the mid rounds by the Buffalo Bills. Could not have been a better situation for Ray Davis, could not have been a better fit for the Buffalo Bills player-wise. So, yes, Keon Coleman's a huge story, and that's why I talked about Keon Coleman first. But the story of Ray Davis is one that I think is just as compelling, just as interesting, and just as important to the future of this Bills offense than just about anybody outside of Coleman. So definitely want to bring that up. This is going to be an offseason that we look back on, and I'm thinking it now to myself, not now, but previous, now and previously. Is this going to be an offense where, not saying that the Bills are going to be a run-first offense by any means, they have Josh Allen at quarterback, but are they going to open that up a little bit more? Are they going to be more balanced? Are they going to show more different looks with the running backs that they have? I think they can. And with the guys that they have, I think they should. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this materializes come, training camp. That's a factor that always plays into the preseason, and the preseason plays a factor into what takes place come the regular season. There's a lot of guys that are vying for positions on this team. That running back battle, Ray Davis will be a part of it, along with Frank Gore Jr., along with Ty Johnson. We'll see how that shakes out. Do the Bills carry 4 running backs, or do they only carry 3? That's a decision that Sean McDermott is going to have to make late August, leading into week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals at the Highmark Stadium. Almost said the Ralph, but I'll call it the Ralph. We'll just call it as it is in my generation. So the story of Ray Davis, one definitely worth rooting for. Chiming in on a comment that I got on YouTube. Which team in the AFC East do you see as the biggest threat to the Buffalo Bills? So I'm glad you brought that up, because the AFC East was the next topic that I wanted to talk about. Yes, this was the biggest storylines for the Buffalo Bills, but I think playing 6 games, winning every game in your division, can not only catapult you to a division championship, can not only catapult you to the playoffs, but can also catapult you to that number 1 seed, first round bye, home field advantage in the playoffs. That is something that has eluded Buffalo in the Josh Allen era. We've not been able to obtain that number 1 seed. And I think that's played a big factor as to why the Kansas City Chiefs have been able to go back to AFC Championship game after AFC Championship game, Super Bowl after Super Bowl, due to the fact that they have had home field advantage at Arrowhead. That's been a big factor. Pat Mahomes has said it himself. I think if any team played at home in those big moments, in those big games, as many times as the Chiefs have these last few years, they'd find themselves in a dynasty-type situation, right? So looking at that, let's try to sweep this division. It won't be easy. Each team gets minimally better. And even the Carolina Panthers, who suck, right? They flat out suck. They didn't have a first-round draft choice because they traded it away last year to Chicago to obtain their first overall pick to take Bryce Young. Following year, Carolina is the worst team in the league this last season, and that number 1 pick then allows Chicago to take Caleb Williams. Pretty startling, pretty amazing. But they still got better. They got Xavier Legette. They got a new coach, more progressive offensive mind that I think will fit what they want to do, that has had recent results in Tampa Bay. So my point is, every team gets marginally better. Even the worst team in the league from the previous season gets a little bit better than what they were the year before. Some teams get a little bit worse. Some teams move back. Some teams move up. I think the AFC East is a very difficult division, and I think it's far more up for grabs now than it has been in recent years. You guys have to remember, even as diehard members of Bills Mafia that we all are, this division was won by the skin of our teeth. We had to go on a run of 6-7 straight wins, including the schedule kind of falling in our lap of, oh, well, we got to win 6 weeks in a row. If we win those weeks in a row, then we play Miami in the season finale. We beat Miami. We're in really good shape. We win the division. We clinch, right? That's what happened. But the Bills had to win 7 in a row. That is a big ask. We did it. Yes, we did. But I think there's different factors this year that if the Bills are found to be in the same circumstances again, which I don't think they will be, but let's just say for, devil's advocate type conversation that they are, then the Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots will play a factor at some point. And maybe so, the Jets and Dolphins will than the Patriots. Maybe not. We lost to the Patriots last year. Any given Sunday, Monday, or Thursday, anything can happen. So to me, I put them in this order for a specific reason. I put the Jets second for a specific reason. I tend to hold out the belief that had Aaron Rodgers not snapped his Achilles like a chicken wing bone 4 plays into his Jets career, the last season division standings would have been a little bit different. The Jets would have been far more of a contender. They would have been better. They would have won more games. I'm not saying that they would have won the division at all, but it would have been different. I think we could all agree on that, right? That played a big factor in where they finished in 2023 than in comparison to if Rodgers was healthy throughout the year. I think you'd be a moron not to agree with that, right? So Rodgers is all systems go. I haven't heard anything negative towards Rodgers. I haven't heard that Rodgers is, not competing in practice in certain drills or anything like that. I've heard that he's all systems go. It's only OTAs. They're playing in jerseys, shorts, and a helmet. Doesn't say a lot quite yet. No contact, right? Doesn't say a lot quite yet. But I think there is something to the storyline that Rodgers would have come back had he found himself coming back to a team that was in playoff contention. The Jets were not. So they did the smart thing. They held Rodgers out. They waited till he was fully healthy a year later. And, you're in good shape now. He's 1 year, almost 1 year removed from the injury. I think he'll be okay. And I like what the Jets did in terms of reinvesting in their offensive line. I like the makeup of the offensive line on the New York Jets, the weapons that they have, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, more than Miami. And I say that because mostly it comes down to their defense. I'm not even necessarily talking about I mentioned their offense just now, but that defense is very good. Miami lost, what would I say, 5 or 6 off the top of my head, 5 or 6 defensive starters that was not a good defense anyway. And they lost some of those guys, and they weren't really great players, but they were factors in what helped them in previous years, dating back not just last season. Obviously, their offense was, or their defense rather, was like 11th, but previous seasons they were much, much better. They're in a state of transition defensively, much like Buffalo. The Jets bringing back the majority of the guys that they've had the last few years on defense. Their offense line is better. So I think the Jets are going to be more of a challenge to Buffalo than Miami. I've never been a Tua guy. I've never looked at Tua and thought franchise quarterback. Never looked at Tua and thought I got to be worried about playing him. There's just nothing about him that really wows me. And I think that the supporting cast has greatly impacted his success for the better. Obviously, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They kick the tires. They take a flyer out on Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know how that's going to work out, that portion of it. But, hey, they're hoping that he could be even a quarter of what he was with the Giants as like a wide receiver 4 or 5 for the Miami Dolphins. So realistically, it's a low risk, high reward move. No risk whatsoever in going out and signing a guy like that. So, power to him for trying, right? Can't fault him for trying. Can't fault any team for trying, right? But at the end of the day, I still don't think it's enough, because at the end of the day, this league does most of the time come down to one position. And that one position is the quarterback position. And no team has a better quarterback in the AFC East than the Buffalo Bills do in Josh Allen. Rodgers is not better than Allen. Tua is not better than Allen. the team that I haven't even discussed yet, that is going through the most massive youth movement out of any team at the game's most important positions, the New England Patriots, their quarterback's not even on the same stratosphere right now in terms of what he's brought to the league and everything. He's a rookie, right? So Drake May coming in, I talked about that pick, the player, and I talked about the pick specifically when it was made. I looked at Drake May as like the most Josh Allen pre-draft player that I could find in recent years. I really have not seen a big, strong-armed quarterback that can move fairly well be this polarizing since Josh Allen. I'm not saying Drake May is going to be Josh Allen. I'm just talking about how he's been evaluated pre-draft to being drafted third overall, top 5 pick. So big deal. And Josh Allen was in that same regard. People were saying he's too erratic. He forces things. He doesn't have the accuracy, all that, garbage essentially that's helped make Josh Allen what he has been the last 7 years in the NFL were the reasons that people were saying he was not worthy of being a top 10 pick. And lo and behold, Buffalo moves up to 7th overall and they take him, and the rest is history. So breaking it down, New England, it's going to take time for New England to be competitive. The Dolphins will be competitive. The Jets will be competitive. But the Buffalo Bills are still, I believe, the beast of the East, in the AFC East, that is. I think that McDermott, for some of his faults, some of his strengths, are why Buffalo has consistently been able to outplay the division. The consistency within their approach, their players, despite new players coming into their defense, I feel like their defense is going to have a point to prove with all of the topics that I've read about their defense. It's been looked at as kind of an afterthought heading into this season. And yeah, they lost some key veteran players, guys like Jordan Poyer. Jury is still out on whether Micah Hyde is going to come back or not. I definitely feel that that's a big deal. Don't get me wrong. Trey White, going down last year, but the Bills have been playing without Trey White for basically the last 2 years. So they're accustomed to that. Poyer, I think it was a good kind of tip of the cap to say, thanks, it's been a great run. You want to go do something else, you can. And we're going to go in a different direction too. Micah Hyde, God, I love that dude. He has been phenomenal for this team, for this community. I'd love to see him come back, maybe, if there's a chance late in the season. Possibly, right? Never say never. He hasn't said no. He hasn't said yes. So only time will tell. But it leads me to my next point, that the Bills defense needs new leaders. Those guys were far beyond football players. They were leaders to the highest of levels, year in, year out, demanded results, and they were results that they got. No team has won as many games as the Buffalo Bills have the last 4 years outside of the 3-time Super Bowl champion, Pat Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs. So that just goes to show you winning has happened here. They just have not gotten over that hump that has been ultimately the Chiefs dynasty. And I hate to say those words. It makes me want to vomit, but it is what it is. It's a part of history. We've been on the wrong side of it, been on the wrong side of history a lot of times, right? But how do we get on the right side? What's the next step to getting back to sustainable success? And can that success be even more sustainable than what we've seen the last 7 years? I think there's potential reason to believe that it can. Josh Allen's only 28 years old. New defensive leaders, who will they be? Will they be guys like Cole Bishop? Will they be guys like Ed Oliver? Will they be guys like Teron Johnson? Will they be guys like Rasul Douglas, who I thought was one of the best in-season moves that the Buffalo Bills have made in a long time? And Brandon Beane's made a lot of really good moves, but that might be one of his best trades that he's ever made. Given the situation that was within the organization with Trey White, trying to find a guy that could come in and play against the ones of the NFL, It's a really big ask. Buffalo trades a third-round draft choice to Green Bay. Lo and behold, Rasul Douglas, he's not just playing against the ones, he's picking off some of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I really enjoyed what I saw from him. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for new players, guys like Mike Edwards, who have won Super Bowls in Tampa Bay and Kansas City. They know what it takes to bring that level of compete here to Buffalo. And the 600 people tuning in right now, 615 right now, greatly appreciate it. But I think the defensive leaders are key. And maybe the offensive leaders are too. And listen, this is the part where I'm going to make the biggest joke out of the topic, but you got to find a leader to replace the one you never had in Stephon Diggs. It's a pretty apparent at this point that the leadership qualities were non-existent from Stephon Diggs in terms of the distraction, the animosity that he had, whether it was with Allen, whether it was McDermott, right reasons, wrong reasons, that would not reflect what I have studied as leadership, that would not reflect a guy that wants to propel his team, that would reflect a guy that does not know how to propel his team. So the actions kind of speak louder than words, whereas he's played in Minnesota, didn't like Kirk Cousins, played in Buffalo, loved Josh Allen, then didn't like Josh Allen. Goes to Houston, playing with a second-year quarterback in C.J. Stroud. He doesn't show up for voluntary or for mandatory OTAs, I believe. Mandatory OTAs. So history repeating itself. Evidently, you don't pay a guy $30 million in dead cap to get out of here unless you really need him gone. So that level of leadership was never there. And the Bills were able to win, again, the second highest amount of games with that guy as a main piece of that. I look at that as a positive, whereas some people look at that as a negative. I look at it as, holy shit, they won the second most amount of games with a wide receiver that was essentially known inside the league as one of the biggest prima donnas that the league has seen in a long time. And I think that narrative was harped on a little bit too much. I think that the situation was partially mismanaged by the Bills themselves. But at the end of the day, there were factors that didn't need to be factors. There were factors with Diggs and the Bills that evidently do not happen elsewhere, are not allowed to happen elsewhere. So that's where the conversation can kind of shift towards the Bills and what they might have done or what they might not have done at all to help the situation, to help make it a better outcome than what it is now, where Diggs is gone. You're bringing in more young players, hoping that those young players can be what you need them to be to help bring Josh Allen to where he belongs, and that's a Super Bowl with the Lombardi Trophy holding it over his own head, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see how that transpires, whether it's Coleman, whether it's Curtis Samuel, what types of players are going to need, what players in particular are going to need to step up. Yes, we know production-wise, guys like Dalton Kincaid are going to produce. Guys like Curtis Samuel, he's probably licking his chops right now at the opportunity to play with Josh Allen. There's no doubt that's the best quarterback he'll have ever played with to date in his NFL career. And then you have the Knoxes who've been here. You have the pieces that they've brought in. Which ones can kind of rise to the top? Can Marquez Valdez-Scantling be somebody that, you would hope that a veteran can make an impact? Or will he be a washout? And we've seen them sign guys that are veterans. We've seen them bring in veterans that cannot even make the team. And I think that's a credit to their drafting ability. I think it's a credit to their signing ability pre-draft, that when they sign veterans late in the offseason, they have a very tough time making this team. So that's something that I definitely wanted to touch on in regards to this upcoming season. Now, my last point is a hot take here about Josh Allen. For the Josh Allen haters out there, which I know there are still, Josh Allen haters that refer to him as a turnover machine, saying that he's overrated, that he can't win the big game, and this and that. it's well known that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I don't think that can be underestimated or overlooked. It's just really dependent on where you rank him. I would rank him at the top, right alongside Pat Mahomes. I think there's a 1A, 1B in this league right now, and I think Mahomes is 1A. I think Allen is 1B. I'd say Burrow would be a 2 and when healthy. And I got a lot of love for some guys that have not had good years these last couple of years that I think potentially are far better than what they've shown. And I think this year's going to prove that in the case of like a Justin Herbert, in the case of like a Kyler Murray. I'm not saying those are top 5 in the case of Murray. I would for Herbert, but potentially, right? Potentially with some of the new additions and new coaches and things like that. There's some guys that I really like that just have not been able to show it yet. Whereas those players that I've mentioned, some believe are better than Allen. I don't believe Lamar Jackson's 1/10 the quarterback that Josh Allen is. I just don't. You could say he's a reigning MVP. The MVP is as relevant as this light bulb in this room. I mean, it's unbelievable how the MVP has turned into the quarterback award. And I didn't think Lamar was deserving of it. I think when push comes to shove, there's a big difference between winning a game against the Cardinals week 5 and putting up 400 yards and then laying out an absolute dud in the AFC championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And those things have happened. Josh Allen hasn't laid down duds. He's gone toe to toe. I'd look at Josh Allen as a 2-time title contender that lost by a couple rounds. He's right there. He's just not good enough in comparison to the guy that's got the belt. That's how I'd use that combat sports analogy for Josh Allen. But I do think that he's officially in a Peyton Manning and Tom Brady territory. And I say that because I know Peyton Manning's career like the back of my hand. I lived it. I watched it. I know Tom Brady's career like the back of my hand. I lived it. I watched it. It wasn't always easy for these guys. It was not always Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. It was not always Randy Moss, Wes Welker. It was not always these great receivers that they were throwing to. There were years where Peyton Manning was throwing to Austin Collie and Anthony Hernandez, not that Anthony Hernandez, but a different one. There were years where Tom Brady was throwing to Jabbar Gaffney and David Patton and guys like that really were average at best type players, but they were able to propel those talents based on their ability to read the field, based on their ability to utilize their skill. And I think Josh Allen's biggest test this season is proving that he can do more with less. If he can do that, then he is 1A, 1B, without a shadow of a doubt. And nobody, even his harshest critic, will be able to hate on it. With the receiving core that Buffalo has right now, I'm not saying that the receiving core is terrible, but it's different. And when you go through change as a quarterback, there's a lot of wondering, where's that football going to go? How is this offense going to look? How is Josh Allen going to be the Josh Allen that he's been? Well, he's going to use his skills, and those skills are a laundry list in comparison to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. You want to talk about just attributes, agility, speed, awareness, things like that, throwing power, things like that. Sounds like I'm playing Madden here, but Josh Allen's got those in spades over the field right now. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he can be that Manning or Brady type quarterback, and the fact that he needs to utilize the weapons that he's got, however limited they might be. I don't think they're as limited as people think. I like the Curtis Samuel addition. I think Keon Coleman brings a massive upgrade over Gabe Davis. I don't look at Coleman as the upgrade or replacement for Stephon Diggs. There is no replacing a talent like Stephon Diggs in the NFL draft. They could have drafted Malik Neighbors. They could have drafted Rome Odunze. I don't think those guys now bring to the table what Stephon Diggs did the last 4 years with the Buffalo Bills. It'd be crazy to think that a rookie could come in and put up those numbers that Diggs put up in 2020. He'd have to be one of the most special players, in the league. And I don't know if Keon Coleman is that yet. I think there's product things that have to be worked on and crafted. But I said yet. There's no telling what this kid could be in 2-3 years from now. And that's what the draft is really about, projecting talent, not at 20, but how is it going to look at 24? How is it going to look at 25? And I mean age when I say that, not year, but could throw in year two as well. How is that going to look? But for the most part, tight ends can catch, running backs can catch. And I think the Bills' offensive line, while that has had its own shake and move in and mixing around, I felt very confident that there are some underbelly guys with some underbellies on that O-line, no doubt. But there are some underbelly guys that we don't even – I mean, I know about them, but we haven't seen them play for the Bills yet. Van Pran Granger, Alec Anderson. There's some big guys on this line that have a point to prove as well on both sides of the ball. So I'm very, very optimistic in terms of where the team is at. I think that the schedule, while difficult, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the game. You have a defensive-minded coach, which when times have been tough on defense due to injury, players have stepped up. Players have played well. Guys like Terrell Bernard coming in for Tremaine Edmonds when Edmonds departed, arguably a Pro Bowler. I thought he should have been, so that's the scheme, that's the coaching, and I like that side of the ball. I feel a lot of faith in that side of the ball in terms of the scheme and in terms of Sean McDermott putting the defense in the right position to succeed. Offensively, Joe Brady can't get much worse than what we saw the first 6-7 weeks with Ken Dorsey. We weren't worse with Brady. We rallied, right? So another year in that for Allen and everybody else, I think it's only going to help. So with that being said, those are the biggest storylines heading into the 2024 season. I appreciate all the comments. I'll be sure to get to those. Of course, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Go Bills.